When most people imagine ancient Rome, they picture something unmistakably Roman. Temples raised on high platforms, stone arches, priests reading signs from the gods, magistrates wearing togas and addressing the public. But how much of this actually began with Rome? Long before Rome ruled the Mediterranean, many of these ideas were already taking shape in the Etruscan cities to its north. Rome grew from Latin, Sabine, Greek, and other Italic traditions, but the Etruscan contribution was fundamental. They helped give Rome its temples, engineering traditions, religious rituals, symbols of authority, and even the alphabet used to write Latin. According to Roman tradition, Rome's final three kings were connected to Etruria: Tarquinius Priscus, Servius Tullius, and Tarquinius Superbus. Their stories combine history with legend, but archaeology confirms that 6th century BCE Rome changed dramatically. Settlements were joined, marshes drained, roads and temples built, and the low ground became the Roman Forum, the city's political and religious center. Roman writers credited the Etruscan kings with bringing builders, craftspeople, and religious knowledge into the city. One project symbolized Rome's engineering ambition: the Cloaca Maxima, or Great Drain. Its earliest form was probably a 6th century BCE channel that drained the wet ground around the Forum into the Tiber River. Later generations rebuilt, enlarged, and covered it. What survives is not one untouched Etruscan sewer, but its origins belong to the period when Rome was becoming a monumental city. By making the ground usable, engineering made urban life possible. Centuries later, Dionysius of Halicarnassus identified infrastructure as the clearest expression of Roman greatness. The extraordinary greatness of the Roman Empire manifests itself above all in three things: the aqueducts, the paved roads, and the construction of the drains. Early Rome's most important building stood on the Capitoline Hill. According to Roman tradition, the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus was begun under the kings and dedicated in 509 BCE, the traditional first year of the Roman Republic. It honored Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, the Capitoline Triad. Unlike a Greek temple surrounded by steps and columns, it was approached from the front, a defining feature of later Roman temple architecture. Roman tradition claimed that Vulca, an Etruscan artist from Veii, created its terracotta image of Jupiter. That sculpture is lost, but the Apollo of Veii demonstrates the energy an artist from Veii could bring to a sacred building. Here we see a larger pattern. Rome absorbed forms already established in Etruscan Italy, adapted them, and eventually used them on a much greater scale. The arch is another example. The Etruscans did not invent the arch. Arches already existed in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Greek world. But Etruscan builders used them effectively in gates, drains, bridges, and other structures. Wedge-shaped stones called voussoirs transfer weight outward and downward into the supports. The central keystone locks the stone into position, allowing the arch to span a wide opening and carry great weight. Etruscan gateways, such as the Porta al Arco at Volterra, brought the form into the monumental architecture of central Italy. Romans expanded it on an unprecedented scale in sewers, bridges, aqueducts, amphitheaters, triumphal arches, and vaulted interiors. A practical structure became one of Rome's visual signatures. Etruscan influence could also be carried, worn, and performed. Roman tradition associated the Etruscan kings with symbols, including the curule chair, purple-bordered toga, and fasces. rods bound around an axe and carried by lictors before a magistrate. The rods represented the power to punish. The axe represented power over life and death. The modern word fascism comes from the Italian fascismo, derived from fascio, meaning a bundle or political group, a word ultimately connected to the ancient fasces. Together, these objects turned authority into a public image. The Roman triumph may also have absorbed Etruscan elements. A victorious general entered Rome in purple, riding like a king. Pliny the Elder describes a public slave holding an Etruscan gold crown above the general's head. Tertullian later says a voice behind him warned, "Remember, you are only human." The idea expressed by memento mori, remember you are mortal. Rome expelled its kings in 509 BCE, but preserved many of their visual symbols and reassigned them to the Republic. Religion passed through a similar process. Romans sought divine guidance from augurs who interpreted birds and other signs, and from Etruscan haruspices, who examined the organs of sacrificed animals. One of the strangest surviving objects is the liver of Piacenza, a life-size bronze model of a sheep's liver made around the late 2nd century BCE. Its surface is divided into sections bearing the names of Etruscan gods, perhaps guiding priests in connecting parts of the liver with regions of the divine world. Rome retained the practice. Long after Etruscan independence disappeared, Roman leaders still summoned Etruscan haruspices during moments of danger or uncertainty. Rome conquered the people and continued asking their priests what the gods intended. The Etruscans also passed on an extraordinary bronze working tradition. Few objects demonstrate their mastery better than the Chimera of Arezzo, made around the end of the 5th or beginning of the 4th century BCE. The Chimera was a monster from Greek mythology, part lion, goat, and serpent, killed by Bellerophon while riding the winged horse Pegasus. The bronze captures its suffering and resistance. Its back arches, ribs rise beneath the skin, and mouth opens as the body twists in pain. It probably belonged to a larger group with Bellerophon. Its serpent tail is a later restoration that probably does not preserve the original position. An Etruscan inscription on its right foreleg, read from right to left, dedicates it as an offering to Tinia, the Etruscan sky god. A Greek monster had become an offering to an Etruscan god. Another famous bronze appears to connect Etruscan art directly to Rome's foundation. The Capitoline wolf shows the she-wolf who, according to legend, nursed Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome. She stands rigid and alert. Her ribs form sharp curves, while the fur along her neck rises in flame-like locks. For centuries, the wolf was considered a 5th century BCE Etruscan work. Technical studies have led some scholars to place it in the Middle Ages, while other scholars and the Capitoline museums retain the ancient date. The twins are Renaissance editions, probably from the late 15th century. The sculpture may therefore combine an ancient or medieval wolf with Renaissance infants to create Rome's enduring symbol. Its uncertain date reveals how later generations reconstructed Rome from fragments of the past. By then, the independent Etruscan cities had been gone for centuries. Rome captured Veii in 396 BCE. Volsinii, the last major independent Etruscan city, fell in 264 BCE. Conquest did not erase Etruscan identity immediately. Their language remained in use while Etruscan families entered Roman life. Their portraits changed with that world. On later sarcophagi, archaic smiles gave way to older, individualized faces, such as that of Lares Pulenus. Age, lineage, and public achievement became increasingly important. Roman portraiture had several sources, but it developed in an Italian world where Etruscan artists had already made age and individual identity visible. The Arringatore, or orator, is a life-size bronze from the late 2nd or early 1st century BCE. He raises his right hand to command attention before addressing a crowd. His lean, lined face is unmistakably individual, not an ageless god or idealized Greek athlete, but a mature public man whose authority comes from experience. He wears the short toga and high boots of a Roman magistrate. Yet, an Etruscan inscription identifies him as Aule Metelle and records the statue's dedication by a community. His name is Etruscan. His clothing and pose are Roman, and his statue uses the bronze casting tradition for which Etruscan artists had long been renowned. Aule Metelle stands where Etruscan and Roman identity become almost impossible to separate. The Etruscans did not simply vanish. Their cities became Roman cities, their aristocrats Roman citizens, and their religion, art, alphabet, political symbols, and architecture part of Roman culture. Rome carried those forms across an empire, and later societies inherited them from Rome. The Etruscans disappeared as an independent political people, but much of what they created continued under another name. Rome conquered the Etruscans, but culturally, it may be more accurate to say the Etruscans conquered Rome.